Welcome to the BioBalance Healthcast. I'm Dr. Kathy Maupin.
And I'm Brett Newcomb. And today we're going to talk about dominoes. Kathy and I are writing a book about what she does and the treatments that she has. And one of the analogies that we use in the book constantly refers to the cascade of aging. And as you age, there are a series of things, a sequence of things that happen that negatively impact your health. And we refer to those as the dominoes that fall. And much of the time when we do these podcasts, we talk about the first domino that falls, which is the loss of testosterone. And today we're going to be talking about the second domino that falls, which is the domino of progesterone. And Kathy, can you tell us a little bit about that?
And the sequence starts usually around late 30s, early 40s. So we're talking about dominoes that start falling at that stage that in general no one speaks about in medicine.
Well, today we're going to do a little talk about anthropology. And
it is about medicine too.
it is about medicine too, but conceptually you can think of these things like an old medieval fortress or castle. There were walls of defense, and if the enemy would breach the first wall, there'd be a second wall, and then there'd be a third wall.
The walls are hormones.
These walls are the hormones that protect and defend you against the aging cascade. And so if they work appropriately to protect the castle, then testosterone is out there as the first line of defense and as the strongest wall. But if it is breached, if it weakens and our bodies make less and less over time, then the second wall is not as strong, not as good, not as universal as the first wall. But the second wall is progesterone.
That's right. That's right. And that's the second thing that actually starts going away. But progesterone is a little different than testosterone. Testosterone takes a slow kind of decrease all the way up between 38 and sometimes 50. So it slowly comes down. You may feel it earlier than when it's all gone, but it's a slow decrease. Now, if you are talking about progesterone, progesterone is an intermittent hormone anyway. Progesterone is secreted throughout our life from the time we start having periods until the time we stop having periods in the second half of the cycle. So the second half of the cycle is when the body's preparing to implant an egg, and progesterone is that hormone that prepares for pregnancy. Its only real use is for us to become pregnant and to then, when it goes away at the end of the cycle, for us to bleed. So that progesterone is what you're familiar with, causing your cycles to be normal, regular, causing you to have normal bleeding, giving you a nice, even temperament.
So when you say regular, predictable, consistent, you're talking about the chemistry of the system that makes the 28-day cycle. Then there are things that happen in each of those weeks. And about halfway through, the progesterone kicks in.
Yeah, on day 14 in a 28-day cycle. So if you are having a period, you have very low levels of everything except testosterone. Testosterone's pretty consistent in a cycle. And then we're talking about young women. So the normal is testosterone stays even except a spike right before ovulation. Estrogen's very low during the time that you're having that a woman's having a period. And since I'm talking to you, I don't want to say you. So I'm talking to all the women out there.
I don't know. I think men have regular cycles too of mood fluctuations.
We haven't figured that one out.
Yeah.
But the estrogen goes up and then kind of evens out during the second half of the cycle and then drops right before a period. So that's the estrogen cyclic nature of estrogen. So, and that was meant for childbearing. And then progesterone, it starts being secreted from that very area where the egg was ovulated from. And it's secreted until you get to the point where estrogen drops, it drops as well and starts the period. So progesterone is basically a stabilizing hormone for the lining of the uterus. It's a preparatory hormone for pregnancy, and it keeps us even in terms of our mental state, and it keeps us calm. And when we're pregnant, we have tons of it, and in general, when we have tons of it, we're very calm and chilled out.
So you know where this is going to go, and that is that even, consistent, moderately tempered female who then becomes uneven, inconsistent, immoderate, and they talk about PMS syndrome.
Right.
So
putting up with men's
is that real?
stuff.
PMS, putting up with men's stuff.
But it's really, PMS is really a loss of that progesterone cycle or no ovulation, which means all you've got that month is estrogen and testosterone. Or it is a low level, you're not producing as much. Okay, so when you don't produce as much progesterone, the ovulation wasn't good, it probably wouldn't sustain a pregnancy.
So the balance is not right.
The balance is not right.
Okay.
So when the progesterone is too low and the estrogen's normal or high, that balance makes you unable to carry a pregnancy. It makes you also unstable, irritable, unhappy, swollen,
the instability, hungry. The irritability, and all those are symptoms that tell you there's a progesterone imbalance?
Yes.
And so it's not about diet or mood or exercise or hard work or attitude control?
Well, if you're not under stress and you are eating properly, you have less likelihood of having PMS when you're young, okay? So PMS is you can have it when you're young and when you're old, but it's two different reasons to have it. When we're younger, when we go into a stress mode or we exercise too much, or we don't exercise at all, or we don't have a balanced, healthy life, then our bodies aren't getting ready to have a pregnancy, okay? So it's not good for us to get pregnant if we're too stressed out, or if we're running all the time. You'll talk about anthropology of this.
I will.
But if we're running all the time, we're running too much, our body fat drops so low, it's not safe for us to have a pregnancy. So this system was designed to allow us to ovulate, get pregnant, and carry a pregnancy so when we were healthy, when we were well enough to take care of a baby, and it gets dysfunctional when we're not healthy. Okay,
so you're talking about the medicine of it, and you're giving good medical descriptions of the process. I deal with the psychological spectrum, and in 30 years of practice, I can't tell you how many women I've had come in, or families that I've had come in, where there are concerns, there's fragility in the relationship that's attributed to PMS and the moodiness and the volatility and the unpredictability and so on. And historically, to my knowledge, not being a physician, and so I'm going to ask you, my interpretation of that, my understanding of that, has been that it was thought of as a mood disorder or an emotional disorder, not as a medical disorder. Does that agree with your training?
Yes.
Is that what you were taught?
Yes. I mean, I investigated this early on in my training in the 80s. In the 80s and into the 90s, in fact now, OBGYNs are taught that it is not a progesterone problem. They're taught that doesn't have anything to do with it.
It being PMS.
PMS is not progesterone. It's about women getting crazy because their neurotransmitters are off. Well, their neurotransmitters are off because their progesterone is too low or non-existent. So yeah, it ends up being a psychiatric or psychological issue because we're imbalanced 2 weeks out of the month. The rest of the time we're normal, which makes it very hard to do, well, kind of normal, whatever.
Or you're normal those 2 weeks and the rest of the time.
Yeah, but in general, the second 2 weeks, that's kind of how we differentiate PMS from mania and depression and anxiety syndromes, is that PMS is only that 2 weeks before your cycle.
Right.
Or 1 week before your cycle, but only the second half of the cycle. And generally, we don't consider PMS if you're menopausal. I mean, OBs know this. You don't have PMS when you don't have M. So you don't have menstrual, so you don't have premenstrual syndrome, but they still deal with it like we're crazy. And this is one of my favorite complaints about being an OBGYN and having been an OBGYN in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, is that women were always considered to the medical societies as kind of crazy. They just do that stuff. This is just, just give them something and they'll get better. Give them something to calm them down. Give them something to stop their...
It's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, that we are just naturally like that. And when we get overwhelmingly out of whack in terms of being psychologically stable, just give them a pill and it'll be okay.
Like Richard Harris. How do you handle a woman? Just love her.
Yeah, just give her a pill.
Yeah.
And so they really, I'm not sure what their reason is. Maybe it's control, I don't know. but it was and is still at the top a largely male-run organization. Medicine is a male-run organization. It's for some way it keeps us in our place. We're in our place if we're crazy all the time, of course. So why should we look at this and try to fix it? Because we know they're just crazy, so give them an antidepressant.
So feminists who know what you know become crazy and enraged and outraged at the wrongness and the unfairness of this.
Right, and I had the ability to fix it in my patients.
Yes.
Because I went to, in the 80s when I started practice, I saw these people with PMS. No one was doing anything about it. They didn't even have antidepressants then to do anything about it. They were giving them vitamins. Vitamins is well and good, but it didn't fix it.
Right.
So, so I went to a compounding pharmacist who's still a friend of mine and said, what can we do? I know it's a progesterone problem. And he said, oh, I have progesterone rectal suppositories. You have to be really bad if you're going to have to do that all the time. He said you use them day 14 through 28, give them to your patients. They'll use them because they're desperate. Daily dose at night. And FYI, don't take progesterone during the morning because it makes you very tired. You should always take pure progesterone at night. And so I gave it to them day 14 through 28, and lo and behold, I gave them back what they were missing. They were normal again. Every day of their month.
There was no PMS.
There was no PMS.
Right.
They weren't binging. They weren't swollen.
Okay,
they weren't
so you
hungry,
know this.
and they weren't crazy.
You know this. You saw this in your practice. You know other OBGYNs. You talk. Some of them are doing the same thing. But it's still not being taught that way in medical school.
Right. And in the guidelines for OBGYNs that we are tested on, and I've gone through boards twice, once when I was first in practice, then you have to reboard it 10 years, 10 years. And so I reboarded, and so they still have this, because I still get the stuff from...
Reboarding means she took the board exam so that she could be a board certified.
Right, right. So I took a written test, the second round, because the first one's both written and oral. Right. So I took a written test, and on that test said, is PMS due to progesterone lack, or is it a psychiatric disease?
Yes.
And the proper answer was, it's a psychiatric disease.
Yeah.
Even that,
So
that was in the 90s.
Your answer was marked wrong.
Right. Yeah. It was in the 90s. I mean, what were they thinking? So there's a lot about medicine that is
were they thinking?
So delayed that, and I'm not griping because it was wrong, I'm griping because they're testing every OBGYN in the country on this, and the people that know it are being tested by ancient information.
Well, but the formal...
There's studies on this. They know this.
Any bureaucratic system is slow to evolve. And it takes momentum and time to get change through the system. You were telling me that when you were doing surgeries and you started removing ovaries laparoscopically.
Yeah, that was I did that in the 80s.
And was there a reprimand? Was there a challenge to your doing? Even though it worked that way, it was less invasive, there was less scarring, it was more satisfying.
And now everybody does it that way.
Now everybody does it.
Now everybody. So I mean, I knew how to use a laparoscope, and I was good at it, and I didn't want the patients to have to be off work for 6 weeks.
But you were ahead of the curve.
But I did that. And I was ahead of the curve, and I learned to do it. I was trained to do it by other physicians and going to conferences. So they're teaching it. But I go to my oral boards early on in my training, and I had this on my case list, and they just castigated me for that. They told me that was just dangerous and the most horrible thing to do.
Right.
And I thought, so if you wait long enough, then it's standard of care.
Right.
So 10 years later, it was standard of care. So everything's delayed. So what you hear on the news today, if it's from the American AMA or the American College of OBGYN or the American College of Family Physicians or endocrinologists, it's 10 years behind.
Well, actually, I was watching a news show yesterday morning, and there was a news line going underneath that said that there are now studies that challenge the 2003 study that linked hormone replacement to cancer. And we've been talking about that for a year now on these podcasts, and you've been doing this work and talking about it for much longer than that. And yet it's so demonstrably inaccurate, that 2003 study, and limited. The science was bad, and yet most doctors out there have been trained that it was accurate. And they
the American College of OBGYN said, here, it's accurate. And then 3 years later, actually, they retracted their statement. So for 3 years, they're telling every OB that this is right. You should take everyone off hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And then they come back and it's retracted. Well, no one hears about that.
Because it might cause cancer.
Might, but they proved
that the study was wrong, and
the study actually showed that estrogen did not cause cancer.
Exactly.
But they reported it wrong. Doctors have to read the study. When doctors get, this is what they should do, what we should do, is if you get a study on the news or from the American College of OBGYN that says something that's opposite of what you've seen your whole life. If you've been in practice a long time, you know that estrogen in any form doesn't cause breast cancer, that you have the same risk of breast cancer in estrogenized patients as in people who have never had estrogen in their lives. And so you know that. So when you get this study and you look at it and you know that it's wrong, then you have to read the study and see where it went wrong. And this study was completely, it didn't even say that. That's how it was reported. All the OBs believed it. The American College, I don't even know if they read it.
And a lot of doctors are still saying it because that's what they were taught.
They haven't listened to the retraction. They listen to what they want to listen to.
Well, let's come back for a minute to progesterone and the research about progesterone, because what fascinates me as a former teacher, when I was teaching high school and college, we used to, professors and teachers would talk about the lack of transition of knowledge. You know, I taught history, and I required my students to write in complete grammatically correct English sentences.
Oh, no.
And they would say, but this is an English class. And I'm like, if you learn to write a sentence in English, you ought to be able to write a sentence in history. And they would be frustrated with that. And one of the social studies classes that I used to teach was anthropology. And when you started talking to me about progesterone and the way that it works and the timing of the cycle and all of that, in service of the capacity to have a pregnancy and to maintain a healthy pregnancy. What I remembered was that when I used to teach anthropology, we read about and talked about primitive nomadic tribes who were basically hunters and gatherers. That's how they obtained their food. When they would go through periods of time when food was not available, the women in the tribe would stop the menstrual cycle. And the only modern corollary to that I have seen is when girls become anorexic to the point that they have amenorrhea and they don't have a menstrual cycle.
Or excessive runners or athletes.
Who border on anorexia.
Yeah, anorexia,
yeah, for the same reasons.
Yeah,
though.
for the same reason.
So you start to get the transition and the carryover of knowledge. But in these cultures, because the society couldn't afford women to be pregnant and to produce babies that would make a demand on the resources of the tribe that wasn't there, those babies wouldn't survive. They quit being able to have babies. And then when the food supply returned itself, they'd all get pregnant. And so you'd have these clusters of children all born in the same age cohort because that was the year we had good supply of food.
That's right.
And so I was talking to you about that, and you said the science and the medicine behind that, not the anthropology, is about progesterone.
And what you're talking about has estrogen involved too.
Which is the third wall.
When we're starving, we don't make estrogen or progesterone.
Okay.
So when we get down to such a low body fat, both are missing. But when we are stressed by something, and stress, I mean, if you don't have enough to eat, that's stress. So the first thing, if you were watching the society, would have been that they'd stop becoming pregnant or they'd miscarry a lot because they didn't have progesterone.
Right.
The second thing you'd see is no menses.
Okay.
So in our society, we have constant stress. And our stress is different. It's not like we're running from a tiger and our cortisol goes up and down. Cortisol is the stress hormone. It's like we're always up here because we're stressed every minute of our day.
Right.
And it's mental stress and not physical stress.
Well, some of it's physical. I mean,
in the U.S. and in
starvation
Canada.
and food issues, even in the United States.
But
so we're going to talk about stress in the next podcast.
We're talking about stress and progesterone and how it affects PMS, how it brings it out, and how chronically stressed women get PMS, and then it makes it worse because our mental state isn't so hot, and it's hard for us to actually live our lives.
Well, one of the things that we want to really explore, and we will do so in the next podcast, is the linkage that's there between the physical issues and the emotional stress issues, because PMS has always been characterized as a mood disorder, not as a physical science medical issue. And giving medicines for mood disorders is a real issue in this country. The thought is that it's a characterological deficit of some kind if you don't just muscle up and get through it. So we're going to talk more about that next time. And if you have questions about this or input that you would like to share with us, you can reach us directly. Kathy, how can they reach you?
You can look at my website at biobalancehealth.com. You can email us at podcast@biobalancehealth.com, or you can call my office at 314-993-0963.
And you can reach me at my blog, which is brettnewcomb.com.